If you've ever gotten that call from school again and wondered, why does my child struggle so much more than others? What am I missing? You are not alone. I'm honored to have with me today Dr. Bethany Bilodeau, a behaviorist, sensory specialist, and author of Ease the Pain in the Classroom. Dr. B, as she is known, is an expert in human behavior and has designed innovative programs to help students achieve socially, emotionally, and academically. She holds numerous certifications in behavioral therapies and has been recognized with multiple awards, including the 2024 Business of Year and Education and Business Excellence for Social Equity. I love that. We're going to be talking about all the things child behavior and practical tools you can start using today to create more peace at home. So welcome, Dr. B.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Amy. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you because I have so many friends where we have talked about our children and their behaviors and what the heck is happening. We're okay people, right? We're
Yeah,
okay moms.
we
So
hope, and believe me, I'm probably one of those friends, Amy. You know? And
we
then
all are, aren't we? We all are.
and I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm the parent that had to say 9 times to my kid to get in the car this morning.
Oh, and we all have those moments, right? And so I'm so excited to talk about all those things and let people know that they are not alone and they're not bad parents. And there are things that we can do to help ourselves and our children. So, for moms meeting you for the very first time, can you share a little more about your story? What led you to this work and what keeps you passionate? Because we can see the passion already, right? For you to
Oh,
help children.
for sure. And so professionally as well as personally, I ended up in this field. It was never intended. So my own son, who is in his mid 20s now, struggled a lot as a little guy. He was asked to leave 3 different daycares because of his intensely aggressive behavior, which I couldn't understand. I was like, this kid comes, we love him. We're giving him so much, attention and providing him with so much nurturing for his nervous system, but he was just a very aggressive little kid. And I was that poor parent on the other end of the phone when they would call me and be like, oh, Bethany, he bit another kid. Oh, Bethany, he did this, he did that. And he just was struggling and he wasn't happy. He was not happy even going to a daycare center. And as a parent, I'm sure many of you can relate. When you go to drop that kid off and that kid is crying and begging you not to leave them, you feel like the absolute worst parent in the world. You're like, I'll figure it out. I'll find a way to quit my job and do everything else to stay with you because you just feel like the biggest failure in the world. So my poor little guy, he was definitely going through that. And I looked and looked for different schools, and I finally found one that was a sensory based school. And when I went into this establishment, I was like, wow. Not only is this great for him, this is like my happy place. Like I used to get out of work and like go hang out in the school for hours on end because I was just like, I love this place so much. And, over after a few years of really working on different strategies and meeting with hundreds, and I'm telling you, hundreds of professionals, occupational therapists, physical therapists, different emotional therapists. We really got enough strategies that he was able to be successful both in the public education setting, and he was eventually discharged from special ed before he went into the high school setting. So he did really well at really kind of managing and overcoming those obstacles that plagued him. And I was a very similar kid too. I can remember my elementary upbringing where I would hide all the time in the school and they would have to find me. And I was always sick in high school. My parents got those letters that are like, she's not going to graduate and everything else because I was very anxious and I just didn't feel comfortable being there, even though I was a student who in the high school times, I really excelled academically and in sports, but I still just did not feel comfortable in that school setting. So
I loved when you were
because of
talking
that,
about
I'm
how
there.
much you love your kids' space because we do drop our kids in these spaces and trust that they will love that space and they will be loved by their teachers and their caregivers. And but there's always this part of me as a working mom, right? I was like,
Yeah.
oh, am I making the right decisions? But for you to love the space that they're in and then to see your child thrive in that space is huge.
It's absolutely huge. And I will say for a period of time, I actually left the workforce and I stayed home with my kids. And after about 6 months, I would look at them and say, for your health and safety, you need to go to work.
Oh, I thought that many times too, and I've had so many discussions with my friends that are stay-at-home moms, and they're going, "Oh, I
It's
don't know if this is the right
tough and
decision,"
it's
right?
lonely, and it is, you don't get anything back. I can remember one day sending my husband a text saying, I quit. The pay sucks. I'm not happy with the benefits. I'm very unappreciated at my job. My performance reviews even say that I'm terrible. I need to
Absolutely.
go back to work.
Oh, that's so funny. So there are so many moms that are hearing your story and going, "Yes, oh my gosh, that is me."
Yeah,
But sometimes they feel judged or blamed
so much so.
because of their children's behavior, right? So from your
Right.
perspective, is there, I guess, can we start with a message for those parents? And what is our child trying to tell us?
I think the big, give yourself grace. We often parent from a place of fear a lot of the time, and often how very similarly to the way we were parented also. And there's so much guilt and shame that we feel in that we're not the best parent, that we don't do enough activities with our kids, that we're not doing this and we're not doing that. And we don't stop and think enough about what we do, the times that we are spending with our kids, the times that we were able to make a difference, and that it was life changing for them and everything. And I think that's really important to remember. And it's hard to remember those things. I can remember, and I actually wrote it down in my planner. My daughter got very sick this summer and was in Boston Children's Hospital for a period of time. And I never left. I stayed there the entire time, big kudos to my staff for holding down the fort and making sure that everybody was taken care of with all of our students and our families, because I was, basically in the hospital, and I didn't even leave the room. Like, I stayed with her because I felt like she just needed that level of support. And I can remember after like the fourth or fifth day, she said to me, Mom, you've never left.
Mm.
And I said, No, I haven't. And she said, You're always there. You always are there. You're always there. No matter what happens with me, you're always there. And I just talking about it now, I want to cry because I'm like,
I'm getting
I
teary.
know, honey. And I said, and I always will be. That's my job as a mom, to keep you safe, but to teach you how to be more independent, but also to be there for you when you need that. And just, she's not a kid who hands out compliments. And so I was like, I'm writing this one down. And I think we need to, as parents, we need to write it down and recognize when those things happen and remind ourselves of those wins, because sometimes they're few and far between.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so easy to beat ourselves up with the things that we're not doing right, like you're
We are
saying,
our own worst
versus
enemy.
being all the things that we do, and they're quiet things, right? So I have heard you talk in different places as well about quick signs that you can notice when you go into a classroom, or just things because you were so used to doing this, whether it is posture or where they're looking, or, just things that were fascinating to me. And I know teachers are potentially different than parents with their own children that they have known for, a
Of course
longer
we
time, potentially.
are.
Um, but what can we start noticing about our kids before these meltdowns or episodes of things can happen? What are those small signs that we can look
Definitely say, look at the posture. Like, your child has their natural posture, and that may or may not be contributing to their regulation or dysregulation. I always say if the shoulders are moving ahead of the hips, that child tends to be overly anxious and needs some work done around that area. You want the hips to basically guide the rest of the body. And so if your child moves like that all the time, they probably have a higher level of anxiety, and that's something to be aware of. And we're going into a new situation, we're going back to school, we're coming back off of vacation. Those sorts of things are going to be very anxiety provoking for that child, as well as what's going to happen during these downtimes. Like, what are we doing over vacation? And as parents, we may say, my gosh, they've asked me 5 times what we're doing this weekend. Yeah, and that's the kid who, like, I need constant reassurance. Like, I will say it once and then I say back to my kid, well, what did I tell you a little while ago? What are we doing this weekend? And it's not from a place of judgment or anything else. I just want them to be able to reassure themselves. And by providing them with that question, it helps them, self-regulate versus me co-regulating with them, makes them a little bit more independent. With other kids, when they're getting close to like a meltdown or something like that, you'll see the eyebrows start to come down almost more like a V. You can see the white below the eye or potentially above the eye. And if you can see it above the eye, that typically means that they could become aggressive. Like they're going to either start destroying property or they could become physically aggressive towards you. Um, those sort of things. The white under the eye tends to indicate more of mental instability. So they're feeling really insecure. They could elope or do something like that. That jawline is taut. The lips are drawn together and tight. Sometimes their teeth are clenched. With younger kids, they have that protruded chest and the arms splay. And sometimes the fingers are apart or into fists. With older kids, they can be a little bit more pulled in about it. Like they might have that shoulder pop, but they've got, they have more of that chin kind of drops in a little bit, or it lifts up and tilts out, but it's not the regular alignment of their face. And so that typically tells you, or if you're having a conversation with your child, especially I love this with teens, like they're constantly like looking at the door or looking for escape routes. It's like, this isn't a good time to be discussing whatever it is you're discussing. Like I always say with teens, like you're waiting, you're working on being opportunistic. Like they're coming in and you're saying, oh my gosh, I love how you put that outfit together today. Or I'm really impressed with the fact that you got everything situated in your bag. Or my gosh, you decided to clean off your dresser today. That's amazing. Then you go into the next part of it because you've got to kind of butter them up a little bit and kind of ease them into that conversation. And I usually get into those conversations more with questions than with, I really need for you to do this. I get into like, what would happen if we do this or if we do that? And then they often come up with well, I could do this or maybe I could do that. And they provide that interaction or provide that option of what they could do. And then I can say, that's a fantastic idea. I think that really would work for you well.
All those things that you were saying, like under the eye, like I'm trying to visualize the white under the eyes, like the over.
Yeah.
I kind of got it, and then I was like, under. How? What is the under?
So let me see if I can do it. See how like you see
Oh, so they're
underneath?
kind of looking.
Yeah.
Ah, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Now I visualize
Yeah.
all
And
these
so
things.
and
I'm like,
when they're like that, a great way for you to stand is just to leave your mouth a little bit open, which I'm not a person who stands with my mouth open normally because I try to breathe through my nose. But I try to leave my mouth a little bit open and I lift the sides of my mouth just to let, I don't want to look like I'm smiling because then they're like, what are you happy? Or something like that. But I leave it open just a little bit so that my frown lines don't show so much. I tilt my head slightly to the left, which non-verbally conveys empathy. And I lift my chin a little bit so I look like I'm paying attention. I am paying attention, but it helps to convey that non-verbally. And I will usually bring my hands in front of me and somehow lift my thumbs. And the reason why is because when people can see your thumbs and they're lifted, it conveys non-verbally confidence, and it also conveys that you can keep them safe. So if your thumbs are hidden, that's concerning. Like, and this has been shown through tons of nonverbal research that if like security guards or police officers have their hands in their pockets, people don't feel they're safe in those people's presence.
those are just fascinating things for me to keep in mind for whatever
Yeah,
conversation.
people are often like, "How come when you walk in the room they stop having, the meltdown ends or whatever?" And I'm like, "I'm not. It really is just about my body stance and everything else. It's nothing else aside from that. It's just how my body posture is interacting with them that they feel safe in my presence. That's it. And it can be learned. It's very simple techniques
So many nonverbal things too, which is
for
not
sure.
surprising, but if we can know some of these techniques, we can take every tip we've got, right? We can use
Absolutely. I'm
all
always
the
like,
tools.
man, I need a, and a lot of this I learned because I had two really challenging boys. Like they were a lot. And I had, I was a foster parent for years. I had lots of foster kids in and out of my home. There was one point where I had kids living with me for about 2 years where the ages were 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And as a, at that point I was a single parent and I was like, this is a lot. There's a reason why I'm a little crazy. So
We're all a
and
little crazy.
because of that I was like, I was like, we've really got to figure things out. And so I would dig deeper and deeper and deeper behind the different disciplines to figure out why is it that these behaviors are occurring and how can we extinguish the things that are going to be destructive to them and to the environment, whether that's the home environment, the school environment, the extracurriculars. How can we extinguish those quickly and in a way that does not reduce the individual's self-confidence?
Mhm. And I know we've already talked a few things, especially about teens, which are really helpful for me because I have a preteen, almost becoming a teen.
Well,
So
those are
things to keep in
fun,
mind.
fun years.
I, I'm glad you said fun. There's another person I just spoke to that also said fun, and a lot of people dread it, right? So
Yeah.
I love that you said fun.
Every now and then it's funny because my kids, and unfortunately I work in the same school district some of the time that my own children go to school in, and I'll say I'll do something silly in the hall or something and they'll be like, oh my gosh, mom, and then 10 minutes later they're like, did you see my mom? They're telling their friends, did you see my mom? She just did this in the hall. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, why are you repeating it if you don't think it's funny?
You know you like it. So we talked about our teens, sort of, touched on it, but what are some, I guess, quick, easy things that we can keep in mind for other age groups as well? Perhaps a lot of people have the toddlers or, the younger years. What are some of the things that we can think of when we see those signs of possible meltdowns coming?
I think the biggest thing is when they need reinforcement and they need it in the right area. So oftentimes I'll tell parents, try not to spend a lot of time correcting. And we do as parents, we're so good at identifying a flaw, like top notch, that we tend to want to correct it and correct it like that's not right for that environment. You have to sit. This is what you have to do. And instead, trying to help guide the child to another option. And I will say too, like, I always say, don't negotiate with terrorists. And I'm like, when they're in the midst of having a meltdown and everything else, that's not the time to work on a negotiation with them. Like, if you can be good and do this, they can't. They've lost that ability at that point. They just need to help being regulated at that point. So at that point, you're just offering them an option once they calm down for a second. Most meltdowns last about 30 seconds to a minute and 30 seconds. And you can see it because the kid will be like, having that meltdown. And then all of a sudden they stop for a second, take a deep breath. And it really is only a second. It's about 3 seconds. They take a deep breath, look around, and then go back into it and start doing the same thing over again. So at that moment, when they take that deep breath, and you can see it because they suck that air in, they drop the shoulders a little bit, that's your opportunity to say, do you want your blanket? Or to step in and say, I know that you're frustrated and you're working really hard at trying to get your body back under control. I'm really proud of you. Take their hand, walk away and distract them or divert them into something else. But those are your opportunities, not when they're on the floor screaming, kicking, and everything else. You got to give them a few minutes to get to that point where they can hear you and also sense you and be able to move forward from there. A lot of the times, because of our own discomfort, and I've been there, we want to step in really early at the first few seconds of it, and the kid can't hear you, and that actually adds fuel to the fire. I will also say, when your kids are having those meltdowns, look around in the room. What else is triggering them in that space? Is the TV on? Shut it off. Do you have fluorescent lights on? Turn them off. Do you have natural light possible in that room? Open your blinds or whatever you can, because the more you can reduce sensory input at that point, the more likely they will be able to manage their own behavior.
I love that.
Also about the space. If the space is huge, like if your kid is starting to have a meltdown and they're in the middle of the living room, try to get them into the bathroom or the kitchen, corner of the kitchen, or even the corner of the room or something. The
Mm.
smaller the space, the smaller the episode will be, both
Mm.
in as far as intensity as well as length.
What would you also
Fill the space.
suggest? Yeah, for
Sorry.
parents who are going, like, it can be triggering for them as
Oh,
well, right?
100%. Yeah.
And so, I think a lot of parents I've talked to have, myself included, have like either tried to sit with them, but not necessarily, touch them, but be near them, like see what will work. Or sometimes you kind of have to remove yourself because you don't want to react in a way that you make it worse, right? Because you're triggering each other. So, what are suggestions on people figuring out what the right thing to do for them?
I will say every kid is different and every
Mhm.
situation is different too. Kids learn very quickly what buttons on their parents they can press, do, do, do. My parent does this, do, do, do. My parent does that, and so they figure that out really fast. And so when they have a need, they're actually, trying to press those buttons to have that need fulfilled. If our demonstration is larger for something that's negative, we're going to get more negative. And so knowing what regulates your child. Some children do really well with compression. Some children need caving. Some children feel trapped when they're doing caving and it doesn't work for them. So I would say, give yourself a moment if you need a moment. If your kid's having a meltdown and you know that you're going to say to them, knock it off or whatever,
Yeah.
go put yourself in timeout in the bathroom for a couple minutes. And if they're on the bathroom door throwing themselves against it and everything else, then put your headphones in and listen to something for a few minutes. Get yourself in the right space before you react. And if you do react in a way that you're not comfortable with, give yourself some grace. We've all done that. Oftentimes, if that happens with me with my own kids, I'll come back to my kids and say, I'm sorry, I messed up. I shouldn't have said it in this tone, or I shouldn't have done it in this way. And I'm really sorry. And I will try harder not to do that. Typically, my kid then comes back and says, I'm sorry that I did this thing that upset you, mom, or whatever it may be, because we're a team. We want to work together. And I think that's hard sometimes for parents to say they're sorry, but we want our kids to say they're sorry. So we really need to help role model that. And kids don't hear that a lot. I hear that from kids all the time, especially kids at school. They'll say, I don't hear people tell me that they're sorry when something goes wrong.
Oh, 100%. I've done that many, many times because we all mess up, right? And we go and try to reconcile with our children when those things happen, not if, when they happen.
Yep.
So
And
thank
they're
you for reiterating the
bound.
importance of that and for our kids to know that we are not perfect and that
Yeah.
they shouldn't expect us to be perfect. And we
Yeah.
don't expect them to be perfect either. It's just a matter of teamwork, as you said. So, yeah. And I also love that you were talking about like this builds their ability, right, to regulate themselves over time because that is what we're doing. We're raising future adults, not kids forever. So, how can we help them build this regulation in themselves and that independence over time?
I would say to add in regulation strategies because those were very natural 20, 30 years ago. They just occurred in homes. People sat down, they ate dinner together, they spent a lot of time doing those things. They made dinner together, they washed dishes. A lot of those activities that are regulating, they did together. We're very overscheduled at this point, and we have a lot of input coming in. So it's really tough for kids to regulate themselves. It's really hard for adults to regulate themselves. I talk to more adults nowadays that say, I can't fall asleep at night. When I do fall asleep, I wake up and I have insomnia. I'm having terrible dreams and this and that. So those things are affecting their nervous system and they're affecting our kids' nervous systems too. So spending time saying, it's okay to be quiet and be calm. And I say this because I've never been that person until about the last 5 to 10 years. I was always the person who was functioning in like in crisis, I was a superhero. And in the calm, I was bored as crazy and would try to blow everything up to make it a crisis. So teaching our kids that it's okay to be in the calm, in teaching them what that looks like and what that feels like. Things like water are a natural regulator. Have them go take a bath. A lot of kids, like, they're in and out of the shower so fast a lot of the time because they got to get to bed because they had a practice and then they had an extracurricular and they still have homework to do and da, 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 da. So getting them more accustomed to doing things that are relaxing and allowing themselves to be in the quiet for periods of time. We're really used to being entertained and having our brains entertained a lot, that it's really tough to just sit. And so being able to just sit in the quiet and get through those, they're life lessons for kids for sure, and for adults too, because I'm believe me, I'm the worst culprit, and I'll say, like, I'm not going to touch my phone for this amount of time. And then I'm like, is it almost over? Come on, come on, come on. But kids
Oh, I was just going to talk
need,
about.
they need those regulators. They need to be able to sit under a soft, cozy blanket and feel like it's okay to just sit there and not have the TV on. They need to be able to go for a walk where it's quiet and not talk with someone beside them and just appreciate the sounds of of nature, or the sounds of the outside. And sometimes I'll go through exercises with them of, let's walk for a few minutes. Okay, let's stop and close our eyes for a second. What do you hear? What can you smell? And I'll take them through the senses of trying to experience those things from a different side of it so that they can actually feel like they're closer to those things and that they have a better appreciation of those things, and they can, just sense themselves and have better body awareness.
And I'm not going to dive in because this is opening up a can of worms, I think, with devices. But we have talked about the sensory input, so people can make their own judgments on that. But I am thankful that you kind of reminded me why we have the things that we have in our home, of not filling our schedule so much. Like, I was in Silicon Valley for such a long time where it's the hustle culture of go, 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 and it's exactly that. People are in tons of different extracurriculars, and I felt like I was not putting my child in enough. Are they being disadvantaged? Or, all these things. But this downtime, I'm very thankful for my own purposes, my own selfish purposes of I'm not running around everywhere after work on the
Yeah.
weekends, all that stuff. And my kids, even though they say they're bored a lot, you figure out how to fill that time and have fun off of devices. And they come up with some really creative things to
Which is
entertain themselves.
fantastic. Those skills, the ability to play and create play out of nothing, those are like the most important skills to create social development they will ever have. And it's also one of the biggest signs of people who feel successful and fulfilled at a later ages. So very, very important. You go, Amy. You got it, girl.
I'm so glad we're
You're
talking, Dr.
killing it.
It's my therapy session. You also talk about nutrition too, right? So we've talked about a
Yeah.
lot of different sensory inputs, but can we talk about nutrition real quick? Because food is a huge love language for myself and my children in
Yeah.
different ways. Can we talk about the importance of nutrition for our
We
kids?
can. And to be honest, like, I could talk and have for days on this topic. And I spend a lot of time with parents coaching them on nutrition and really how to feed the brain and the sensory system for youth. And I think that it's really hard. There's so many different things that are out there. And I'm trying in a lot of aspects to just make sure they're getting what they need, not necessarily taking out what isn't needed and what can cause a lot of detriment. And I think that that's huge. I mean, the big ones that I look at with parents is I really want to make sure that kids are getting omega-3s, whether it's through diet or through supplement. Diet through the diet is always best, but that's a huge one. If we're not feeding our brain the right type of oils, the impacts are huge. And I see it with anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. And omega-3s are known as being the biggest one to decrease suicidal ideation. So, every parent, I'm talking to them about that, as well as, the different nutrients that they need. And oftentimes, and it's slightly different for behavior with children and things like that. My 12-year-old is very hyperactive, distracted as all get up. And so for her, she needs a really high protein diet with very complex carbohydrates. Simple carbs, really bad for her, really impact her ability to focus and function. My 10-year-old needs a balance of protein with complex carbs, and she can tolerate some simple carbs. And the reason why is she is more anxious, and that's just how she rolls. And so for her, making sure that her diet has more of those things. So for her, like when we have dinner, and if say I make rice, she might take 2 or 3 servings, which for her, not a big deal. For my older daughter, when she starts to go after serving number 2, I'll say, do you want some more meat or some more protein instead? Like, where you at, girl? And she, because she loves it, she'll usually gravitate towards that or something. But, and it's non-negotiable as far as like the vegetables. Like they always call the protein and anything else middle dinner, and the beginning dinner is that they have to eat their vegetables first, because that's how, so we assure that they eat the things that they need in their diet as well. But those are huge. But knowing what your body type is like and what your child's body type is like, and of course my daughters are adopted, so it's really important. So it's not necessarily going to be the same thing as me. So looking at what they potentially need in order for them to fuel their brains is critical. And the same thing with supplements. My older daughter, because she has so much trouble focusing, she's on ginkgo biloba every day. I give her L-tyrosine so that she has a better time being able to create dopamine in her system. I also give her grapefruit seed extract, because that also helps to produce more dopamine and helps with blood flow in the brain. My younger daughter, real anxious, so she gets L-theanine in the morning. They both get magnesium. They both get vitamin D, vitamin B, vitamin C. And at night, my younger daughter also benefits a lot from 5-HTP, because she needs a little bit more serotonin. She's a little bit more critical, and her mood tends to be lower. So that helps her to keep her mood up where she wants it to be. So she feels better about how things are and everything. So it's a matter of figuring out like how your system works. And I can tell that oftentimes with kids, as soon as I see them. With people individually, like I can tell that like what their brains are going to need in regards to that, and what their systems are going to be happier with.
Okay, this is fascinating. I think we're going to have another episode. If people want a food episode, you all let us know.
And I have so many tricks for how to get people to eat those certain things and everything else. It's really funny, because I'll work with parents that are like, my kid only eats fish sticks or something like that. And I'm like, oh, well, I have a trick.
Okay, I think people are going to want this. So I think we might need to schedule something else, Dr. B, because thankfully my children, and I don't know if it's something I did when they were growing up, but they eat pretty much what we eat, and that's just how
That's
it's
great.
been. But we have friends who have I don't want to label them as picky eaters, but they eat those very select things, and they
Yeah.
have trouble going to other people's homes or going out to eat, or, all these things. So
And a
food
lot
is
of
a,
it can be the sensory issues behind it. Sometimes it can be things like a medical things like torticollis or something like that, that create some of those issues around those things. Like my children both have a lot of food allergies, a lot of food allergies. And so we've also spent a ton of time through diet, and as well as other ways, like the infrared sauna and bentonite clay and all those things, trying to reduce toxicity, because both of my daughters have a lot of food sensitivities. My younger daughter especially, like she can't even eat gluten without throwing it up, or dairy too without throwing it up. And and she's been like that since she was a baby. But as soon as we pulled out a lot of those food toxins, she was able to sleep, through the night. She was much more comfortable. She stopped getting all the rashes and everything else. But, you know, experimenting with those things and figuring out like what's going to work best for your child, because even if they're yours biologically, our environments are so different than they were when we were growing up, that they can have a lot more of those sensitivities that we're not aware that they might be having. And those can impact them behaviorally, they can impact their sleep, they can impact their ability to socially connect, all those pieces.
Yeah, I've heard food being connected to so many different things. I know friends that have adjusted for their children with ADHD or, whatever the
Huge.
struggles are.
It
Yeah.
is huge. A few years ago, we were working with a student who was profoundly autistic, nonverbal, and we worked with the family and said, "Can we change the diet for at least a month?" And they said, "Yep." So we got him onto all pretty much organic foods and everything else. And at the end of the month, he started speaking. So it was significant. And it was just a change of diet. And over like a 2 year span of them staying on this changed diet, he was speaking in like full sentences and everything else. But, and, it's
Life changer.
really diet, and I'll tell families oftentimes, I'll say, if we can change diet, you probably will only need me for a few weeks and then I can fade away, because a lot of the things we can really do with diet.
I love that. And that is so encouraging for many, many families out there, right? We've
Truly.
talked about a ton of different things, but we want our overwhelmed moms to have at least one small tangible action step that they can take away and start building on today for that positive change. What is your one challenge for people today?
I would say to try to have fun with failure. This is a big one. I think we so badly as parents, we want to keep our kids from failing. Like it's just innate in us to be like, "No, I don't want you to fail. I want to protect you with that." And embrace it, but make it fun too, so that it's not as painful, because kids need to realize that it's okay to fail. The biggest thing is we want you to try. And so many kids nowadays, especially nowadays, and I've seen it exponentially grow, they won't take a chance. They don't want to take a risk. They don't want to go to school, all those things, because they're so fearful of failing. So giving them the groundwork that it's okay and it's just going to be fun and we'll try it and it'll be fine. I met with a little girl yesterday and her mother was talking about how she got a hold of a pair of scissors and she cut part of her hair off. And I was like, "Did you like it then?" And she's like, "Not really." And I was like, "But that's okay, because it'll grow back and it's just hair. So it's not a big deal." And she said, and then I told her this very funny story about when my older daughter got a hold of a pair of scissors that were like this big out of a sewing kit. And she decided to give my younger daughter a haircut. So her bangs were about this long. And I had didn't realize it till after the older one was at school that day and the little one got up and I was like, "What happened?" She said, "Jewel cut my hair." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I pick up Jewel from school and I said, "Honey, what happened at school today?" "Well, I got in trouble at recess and then I had to be in the principal's office and then this happened and that happened." I'm like, "Thank you for sharing all that. I so appreciate your honesty." I said, "But is there anything else you want to tell me?" "No, Mom." And I said, "What about this?" And I hold up the tiny scissors and she went, "Oh." Like, not that I don't think your sister looks fab in the new bangs, but we can't cut other people's hair and not allowed unless you are licensed by the state of New Hampshire to cut hair.
Oh man. Oh, those. I was going, oh no, what else happened? Like
No,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank God it was just a
Yeah.
little bit of her bangs that she decided to hack off and it wasn't something more monumental. But, and I had spent a large part of that day thinking about how am I going to address this with her in a way that she knows it's not okay, but she also doesn't feel like, "Well, I tried this," and and just to see, and she went through, as oftentimes kids do, they go through this time period where they want to cut off their doll's hair and and do those sorts of things to see how it comes out, and it's and I wanted her to realize this is not okay, but this isn't the end of the world that you cut off some of your sister's hair as well.
And I love this challenge also because for us as parents, it is so easy to step in and try to prevent all those failures from happening, and we don't let them make the mistakes,
Yeah.
right? But
Yep.
we want them to make the mistakes when they're younger, when the stakes are way, way lower. It's
For
not
sure.
in the future when it's a much bigger scale of
Yeah.
things.
And
Right?
I have this
So,
conversation with high school parents a lot because they'll be like, "Oh, they're failing this class and I feel so bad and I want to help them." And I'm like, it's better for them to fail the class. Let them fail the class. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's better they fail it now than when they're potentially taking a class at the college level or, going after some sort of certification for something or something like that. It's better for them to understand now how they need to work with that and everything else.
because it's the learning that comes after that failure, right? And to
Yeah,
be resilient and to be able to bounce back and keep trying. And we want our kids to have that skill.
we do. Yeah, we do. We want them to have it without having to fail, but that's part of life and it makes us
It is
appreciate
part of
things.
life. And that's good for us to remember too that failure's part of it. That I keep telling my children mistakes are how we learn. And, we need to tell ourselves that too, because we beat ourselves up all the time as parents for making those mistakes and
Yep.
learning
Yep.
opportunities, however you phrase it.
Laugh at yourself too, step away and be like, "Ooh, I dealt with that in an interesting way. Well, maybe here's a better way I could do it."
Oh, that dish that I cooked that was absolutely horrible. I remember that time. Yeah. So we could talk all day, but how can people connect with you further when they're like, Dr. B is awesome. How can I learn more from her?
Probably the easiest way is on our website at www.thebehaviorbootcamp.com, and we're on social platforms under that same title. So
Perfect. And we'll have the links as well. Makes it easy for people to just click on in. And anything else that you want to leave with our parents before we leave?
I would just say, look at yourself and say, I'm doing the most because you're doing the most, and we appreciate you. So keep fighting the good fight because we know it's hard, and we're right there with you. And let us know when you need help.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dr. B. It is an absolute pleasure to talk to you.